As many of you know, his 19th birthday is next Wednesday. And it's, as the days gets closer, and it's definitely getting harder, that realization is really sinking in. That we don't have our son physically here anymore. And I think a lot of people have forgotten. Only thing we want to know is what happened. That's all we want to know, is what happened to our son. Because many parents out there, you still have your children. You still can hug them. You still can call them. You still can celebrate their life with them. And we do not have that anymore.
Something major is happening today in the Nolan Wells case, and this time, the family is not speaking from Mississippi. They are at the National Association of Black Journalists Convention in Atlanta, standing alongside Ben Crump, Reverend Al Sharpton, and Congresswoman Lucy McBath, and they are making a direct push for the federal government to step into the case. But there is more to today's conference than simply asking for another investigation. The Congressional Black Caucus has already sent a letter to Attorney General Todd Blanche and FBI Director Kash Patel demanding an independent federal review of Nolan Wells' disappearance and death. And now, Nolan's parents and their legal team are taking that demand directly to a national audience. Welcome back to Case Watch. If you want the latest developments in the Nolan Wells case as they happen, subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon, and turn on notifications.
What happened to Nolan Wells? Somebody knows something. Somebody saw something. I'm thankful to Reverend Al Sharpton and Mr. Tyler Perry and Terrell Owens and Byron Allen putting up these rewards. I understand others have now put up rewards, and that's good because that means we all have the same objective. We want the truth about what happened to Nolan Wells, and it is urgent. It is urgent because each day that goes by, you worry, will we ever get to the truth?
Today's appearance comes as the pressure surrounding the investigation continues to grow. The Congressional Black Caucus says there are still significant unanswered questions more than a month after Nolan's disappearance and death. In its letter, the caucus asked the Department of Justice to provide federal investigative assistance and determine whether there is a basis for a separate federal investigation, including a possible civil rights investigation. And there is now a deadline attached to that request. According to Ben Crump's office, the Congressional Black Caucus gave the Justice Department 7 days to explain what action it has taken or intends to take. That means the next few days could be very important. The question is no longer simply whether Nolan's family wants federal involvement. The question is whether the Department of Justice will respond to the demand and what that response will look like. And today's conference put that issue front and center. Ben Crump appeared with Nolan's parents, Christine and Elmore Wansley. Reverend Al Sharpton also joined them, along with Congresswoman Lucy McBath. Their message was focused on transparency and accountability. The family wants the unanswered questions surrounding Nolan's death examined independently, and Crump has continued conducting his own investigation into the circumstances surrounding the case. And then Ben Crump revealed something that made the room even more emotional. Nolan's birthday is just days away. On August 19th, he would have turned 19. Instead, his parents are now spending what should have been their son's birthday fighting for answers about his death.
Birthday is next Wednesday, August 19th. It is going to be extremely difficult for his mother, his father, and his family, because this August 19th will be like no other that they've ever had for the last 19 years. I mean, it's a milestone when your child gets to be 18 years old. You try to breathe a little easier, Reverend. Now you say, man, we almost got them there. They're at the cusp of being an adult, cusp of manhood. And you heard how Elmore was working so hard, him and Nolan, his football career, I mean, he had a good start, but this was really going to be his year. I mean, so much hope, so much promise.
Another important point being emphasized is the medical evidence. The independent autopsy commissioned by Nolan's family classified both the cause and manner of death as undetermined. And according to Crump's office, the findings from the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office have still not been publicly released. That is a major reason the family continues demanding answers. But today's developments go beyond the autopsy. The push now involves federal authorities, members of Congress, and civil rights leaders. The Congressional Black Caucus specifically wants the DOJ to determine whether the circumstances justify a federal investigation and whether federal civil rights laws could apply. And there is another important detail viewers need to understand. The FBI is already assisting local investigators. So when the family and members of Congress talk about federal involvement, they are not saying the FBI has suddenly taken over the entire case. What they are asking for is an independent federal review and an assessment of whether a separate federal investigation is warranted. That distinction is important. At this point, there has been no announcement that the DOJ has opened a separate investigation into Nolan's death. There has also been no announcement of an arrest connected to his death. Instead, today's development is about pressure for federal authorities to take a closer look. And that pressure is now coming from multiple directions. Nolan's family has been demanding answers. Ben Crump has been conducting an independent investigation. Reverend Al Sharpton has joined the family's call for greater scrutiny. And now members of the Congressional Black Caucus have formally asked the Justice Department and FBI leadership to review the case. That is a significant escalation. And today's conference gave the family a national platform to explain why they believe that escalation is necessary. But there is another part of today's developments that could become important. Ben Crump's team is continuing to examine information connected to the case, including additional evidence and recordings. The attorney has previously said his team is conducting its own investigation, separate from the local authorities' work. That means there are now multiple efforts underway to establish what happened. Local authorities still have an active investigation. The FBI is assisting local investigators. Ben Crump's team is conducting its own review. And members of Congress are asking the DOJ to independently assess the case. For Nolan's family, the goal remains the same. They want answers. But today's conference has changed the scale of that fight. This is no longer just a family asking questions at local press conferences. Their concerns are now being raised at a national journalism convention, with civil rights leaders and members of Congress standing beside them. And the next major development could come from Washington. Will the Department of Justice respond within the 7-day period? Will federal authorities agree to conduct an independent review? Will they determine that a separate federal investigation is necessary? And will the additional information being examined by Crump's team produce anything that changes the understanding of Nolan's death? Those are now the questions to watch. And there is one thing we should be very clear about as this story continues. A federal review being requested does not mean investigators have determined that Nolan was murdered. It does not mean that anyone has been identified as responsible. And it does not mean the FBI has taken over the investigation. What it means is that powerful voices are now demanding that the case receive another level of scrutiny because, in their view, too many questions remain unanswered. And today, Nolan's parents made sure those questions were heard on a national stage. The spotlight is now on the Department of Justice. And whatever response comes in the days ahead could become the next major turning point in the Nolan Wells case. But there was another important development from today's conference that could give investigators something new to work with. Nolan Wells' phone is now waiting to be examined. According to Liza Park, an attorney with Ben Crump's team, the family is ready to have the device downloaded and analyzed. The plan is for the examination to happen jointly with the family's forensic team, the Jackson County District Attorney's Office, and potentially the FBI involved. But right now, they are waiting on one thing: the District Attorney's Office to provide the date and location. Park said the family is ready for the examination to happen. And that could make the phone one of the most important pieces of evidence to watch in the coming days. The goal is for everyone involved to examine the device together rather than having different parties conduct separate examinations. That means investigators could potentially have an opportunity to examine the phone's digital information in one coordinated process. And for Nolan's family, getting that examination completed appears to be a priority. Because until it happens, there is still information sitting inside that device that investigators have not publicly explained. The timing also makes this particularly emotional for Nolan's family. Ben Crump revealed during today's conference that Nolan would have turned 19 next Wednesday. That birthday is now approaching without him. For his parents, Christine and Elmore Wansley, it is another painful reminder that they are still waiting for answers while their son's case remains unresolved. But the family is not stepping back. Today's appearance showed that they are continuing to push for information while Crump's team continues its own investigation. And there is another piece of evidence that has already drawn attention in this case: audio connected to the day Nolan disappeared. A recording from July 4th was previously released publicly, capturing a call made from the boat to a private towing company. That recording has become part of the larger body of information surrounding the investigation, and additional evidence is still being examined as the case moves forward. So now, investigators and the family are waiting on several things that could potentially provide more clarity. The phone examination, the continuing review of evidence, the official findings that have not yet been fully released, and the response from federal authorities to the request for further scrutiny. But for Nolan's parents, this is not simply about waiting for another announcement. They are trying to make sure every available piece of evidence is examined. And today's conference made one thing very clear: they are not prepared to let the case quietly fade away. The next major development could come when Nolan's phone is finally examined. It could come from the Justice Department, or it could come from evidence that investigators have not yet made public. For now, the questions remain open. But the pressure surrounding this case is growing, and the next few days could reveal whether today's national push leads to concrete action. As we continue following the Nolan Wells case, we will be watching for the DOJ's response, the scheduled examination of Nolan's phone, and any new evidence released by investigators. Because after everything discussed today, the story is no longer simply about what happened in the past. It is about what investigators may uncover next.